Okay, great. So what's going on at the border?
Border Patrol are on horses with cowboy hats and whipping Haitian refugees trying to seek refuge in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we're regressing back to whipping people now. Like, I thought we learned from the past. Is this what we're still doing now?
Yes. As you can see, as evidenced by the videos and pictures, yes, this is the thing that we're currently doing. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is, this is not a thing that has ever actually stopped. This is just something that we're both fortunate and unfortunately, right, that we were able to get on film, right? Like, imagine how many things go on that we don't ever see, so we don't talk about them.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The brave souls who are out there taking these pictures and posting these pictures, I mean, the police don't even want us recording them regularly at this point. They get very upset.
Yeah. I mean, they know what they're doing is wrong, but they still continue to do it.
Do they?
I feel so. They know deep down. I don't know. It's just some like intuition. Like, as a human, what you're doing deep down is wrong.
You sure about that? Morality is not fixed.
I know, but like, it's kind of like a gut feeling per se. It's not something like I could like 100% like say. It's just something that I can feel.
So it's a gut feeling that you have that these things are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's your moral compass.
I wouldn't say it like that. I mean, obviously, whipping people, that's just a big no-no.
Is it? We do it to kids.
People, I guess adults they don't really see them as kids. They see it as like some very, very below. Just like you are able to like whip them, I guess, do whatever you want them just because they're a child.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, what are these people?
These people are humans.
No, they're not. Not to these folks. Think beyond yourself.
Yeah.
Who are these people? Why are they whippable?
I mean, isn't it obvious?
No, it's not obvious. Say it.
They're Black. They're not from America.
That's bigger, right? The fact that they're both Black and not from America. So what are they?
According to them, they're aliens.
Throw some other words out there.
I feel like they're still being treated like slaves.
Sure, historically, right?
Yeah.
Historically, these are slaves, right? If we're talking about Haitians, right? Haitians absolutely were involved in enslavement in terms of having their people enslaved and being one of the primary ports down there too. Haiti is also one of the places that the US has a very interesting relationship with, in that it's one of the most documented places for slave revolts, especially successful slave revolts, right? So there's kind of like a chip on America's shoulder with that one. What else? Who are these people? When America looks at them, what do they see?
It's kind of a lot. They see, like in their eyes, they see old dirty poor people trying to come to our country.
Mm-hmm.
Or dirty poor things trying to come to our country.
Burdens. Right? Burdens in an already economic crisis.
Yeah.
What else? Who are these people?
Probably like from their perspectives, they're like criminals.
Yes, right? Yeah. The act alone of trying to cross the border illegally is criminal, right? According to US law. Therefore, Anybody that tries to do this is already criminal. And what do we think about criminals in the United States?
They're bad.
They're bad. It doesn't matter what you did, right? It doesn't matter the thing that made you a criminal. If you are a criminal, if you have any sort of a record, if you engage in any sort of criminal activity, which is defined as doing things that is against written law, right? You are a criminal. Period. Well, to define someone as a criminal does what to them?
It damages their reputation.
They dehumanizing them. So you call them people, the US does not.
It's a damn shame.
It is what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So for us, like us looking in, it's easy for us to be like, these are people, right? These are people that are struggling and are going through something and they're just looking for help. Not in a capitalistic society, they're not though. In a capitalistic society, you're either helpful or you're hurtful. You're either maintaining the status quo or you're a burden to society, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who are these folks? They're not people to the US. To the US, they're just more mouths to feed, just another burden, more street rats.
Just something else to deal with.
Just something else to deal with. Oh, and of course, we're going to make sure that y'all know we can't let you in because of COVID protocols. What do you think about that? That was the thing that they focused on in most of the press releases. Why would they do that?
Wait, repeat that again?
Why would they focus on COVID protocols with people running for their lives during press releases?
That's just an easy scapegoat. That's an easy excuse. That's like one thing they could blame everything on.
Yes. Yes. And why can they do that?
Because they're able to do that.
Why?
Because it's America. They want to do what they want to do.
What allows them the space? What gives them the platform? So they created a whole platform to be able to do this. What was it?
The government.
No, action-wise.
Oh, like
how is COVID easy as a scapegoat? What makes it so easy to use?
Because you're trying to keep something out from America, so like keep everything in the borders, and they created borders even though borders are not really a real thing, and so they use that.
But borders existed pre-COVID.
Yeah.
But COVID an easy scapegoat.
What makes COVID? Wait, what do you say? What makes COVID an easy scapegoat?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what you call it?
What do you think?
It's like the big thing that's happening in America right now. Like we're living in a quote unquote pandemic, and it scares people.
The mass fear that they created while creating the idea of the pandemic is exactly the thing that they needed to use as a platform for something like this. All the white people are going to be on board.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be on board. Why? Because they don't want to get COVID. Of course. I mean, who wants to get sick? It's just silly. Nobody wants to be sick, right? Nobody wants to have their life in danger and in jeopardy. Like nobody wants that. And so they created this mass fear around a strain of viruses now, right? One of which has not been getting the type of press that it should, because it's one of the only viruses I've ever even heard of that doesn't follow actual viral paths. The Delta variant, functioning like a common cold, is very, very different from the majority of other viruses, right? The majority of other viruses are, you get the fever and chills and all of that, right? Not the runny nose, not the excess bile, like all of that. That's cold related, right? That was the primary thing that folks have been using for years to distinguish between if you have a cold and if you have the flu, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do all these things get conflated then? The mass fear, right? It doesn't matter anymore what gets labeled as COVID, as long as there is a COVID label somewhere attached to something, even if the data itself is not accurate. So take the CDC, for example, and the CDC listed on their website that the data that they were collecting, or that they may still even be collecting as far as COVID is concerned, post-mortem, right? For anybody who supposedly dies of COVID in hospitals. Well, they were asking the doctors to go back and test them after they died, like test the patients after they died. What overrun hospital is going to do that? Who's doing that?
No one.
Nobody. They don't have the manpower to do it. They don't have the capacity to do it. So what happens? All of those cases that they suspect are going to get listed and put down as COVID. So we just created a platform to develop mass fear. So that mass fear is going to it's going to outweigh the human rights issue that's going on. This is one of the things that I've been saying from the beginning of this. This is one of the things that I've been concerned about as far as COVID is concerned, not even the whole getting sick process of it, because I mean, if we took better care of ourselves, we wouldn't have this much of an issue in the first place. I mean, look at the rest of the world right now. They're laughing at the United States because of the way that we've mishandled this entire situation and continue to mishandle it. COVID did not need to be anywhere near what it is. The rest of the world is evidence of that. So why are we like this?
Ignorance.
Sure, there's some of that. What else? What do you think? Why are we like this?
It could be a number of things, like misinformation.
Sure, definitely a lot of that.
And information control in general.
Yes, definitely a lot of that.
What should I call it?
Probably like believing everything that the news has to say when it's not true sometimes.
Sure, right? Because you literally have to watch multiple news outlets to even get enough puzzle pieces to put together to make an informed decision on anything. Each news station has its own agenda. They're all carrying their own agendas, right? I mean, we know this. This is the difference between watching CNN and Fox News, right?
Yeah.
They're both supposed to be the news, so why can't you just watch one? We can't rely on the information. And then for people of color, on top of that, we have a whole added layer of insecurity in terms of the medical systems. Now they're doing the mandates, which is a whole other issue, especially for people of color in this very tumultuous relationship we have with the United States and things that they have forced us to do, right? So it's very easy for misinformation to get spread. It's very easy to mislead people. If you're only watching one news outlet, if you're only getting your news from one place, it is ridiculously easy to mislead you. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't do that? You have access to all this power and control. You're not going to take it? The people believe you. The people not only believe you, they want to believe you, right? That's the thing. The people want to believe you because they want a solution. They want answers. They want to feel safe. They want all these things, right? They want their families to have, nobody wants to be the have-nots, right? You watch the news in order to be the haves because you need to know what not to do. The news is all full of the trash, right? There's always something negative, except for today. Why is this not being blasted on all of our news outlets all the time? Why is this not the top trending story everywhere? Here's a better question for you, because this was something that I brought up on my Instagram earlier. This is not a new trend, right? And the hatred of immigrants in particular, especially immigrants who are coming from regions below us, right? Let's hone in on Central and South America, for example, right? Why do we never see these types of images with Mexican immigrants who are crossing the border, even though we hate Mexican people so much here in the United States? What do you think?
Saying, why haven't we?
Yeah. Why don't you see these types of images? Like, the US has made it very clear that they cannot stand Mexican people. Am I lying?
Nah.
They've made their stance very clear, right? They're always trying to close the border on the South. Nobody's ever really concerned about the border on the North. Nobody's really concerned about, there's way more immigrants who are coming in via plane than there are via border. So why don't we ever see this? Why does it never escalate in this way when it comes to Mexican people? What do you think?
I feel like I'm confused because I feel like we have seen that community regarding the border on the news.
Have you seen people on horseback beating them with whips?
No.
That's the question.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we see these types of images specifically?
Oh, why don't we see these like? I mean, if we do, all it is going to stir up more like conversations. That's like, why is this being had? Like, why is this in order for people to actually be able to get on horseback?
Stir up more conversation?
What happened?
Why would it stir up more conversation?
Because they want to be able to do what they want without anybody telling them what to do.
Who is they?
These, what is it? Is it government owned or state owned border patrol? I'm not too well versed in that.
I mean, maybe.
But they have some form of power.
The Mexican people have a form of power?
No, I mean, I'm talking about border patrol.
But why don't we ever see these images then? If there's something that they can do, why do they choose not to?
Not too sure.
You want to know my theory?
What?
You sure you want to know my theory? You look like you about to be upset, and you know you're about to be upset.
I'm all ears.
My theory is because it wouldn't behoove the United States to whip anyone that they might want to use later who identifies as white here.
I need you to elaborate on that statement.
Let's go back and think about what we were talking about last week with the Irish, for example. So we were discussing that the Irish were definitely a group of folks who came here who were destitute, right? They were coming here in the midst of famine. They were very poor, all of this. And we know that historically speaking, the Irish were definitely the outcasts of the white community until the point came when they were needed for voting power, right? And so what do? Well, if we were to be over here whipping the Irish, I mean, are they really going to be over here hoorah for you? Probably not so much. That's why there's so much divide within the Black community as well. You know, the Black community is like really trying to hold on to this idea of democracy and specifically being Democrat, right? Because they think that it's a savior, like it's going to save them from the Republican and more conservative ideologies, when it's not, right? But there's also that history, right? Well, these are the folks who beat us and who put us in chains and enslavement, even though everybody else was too. That's far beyond the point, right? They know, they can pinpoint, these are the folks, this is the lineage, right? Well, what makes us think we wouldn't do the same thing now? So for folks who are coming from Central and South America, there's a lot of surveys and there's a lot of research that discusses the reasons that they check off white as their race when they come to the United States. The primary reason is stereotypes. Folks don't want to be associated with Blackness, right? The US is not dumb, they know this. They've been using it as a pawn for years. I just showed you on their own websites the definitions of who is who. And it changes, it fluctuates. At some point we had mulatto on the list. That was its own racial category. Right? So these things do change. But what doesn't change is the history once it's already done. It would not behoove the United States to whip people that they want to be able to use as pawns. They'll call them all the names in the world. They'll make you hate them, but they're not going to touch them because they need them. These Haitian folks, what's the US need with them?
Nothing really.
Nothing. That's the difference in my assessment. Thoughts on that?
I mean, it makes sense because Hispanic / Latino, Latina folks can claim that they're white in America, and that also gives them voting power, and among other things, and increasing in numbers. So what would they benefit off of if they showed pictures of them whipping Hispanic or Latino people?
Could you imagine? Could you imagine the uproar in this country, especially now that we have this other research that just came out that's saying that white people's numbers are dwindling?
Oh, they would be on a huge decline.
There would be so much political unrest. But it's okay because it's just Black people. We don't need them. They're the throwaways. The Haitians have always been troublemakers, right? Well, they're troublemakers because of how much and how intensely and intently they revolted against enslavement. That's historically what it is. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Kitwana. I just want to go over some of the main ideas here. Okay. So I'm just getting my notes over here so that I can see them. Okay, so what is Kitwana really interested in?
Wait, repeat that again?
What is Kitwana interested in? Just like in a couple of words. What's his focus? What does he care about? Ooh, the crickets are loud today. I know y'all read this because it's from last week. So somebody give me some words. What's Kitwana interested in?
I think it's about the disparities that the Black community is experiencing. And I feel like he divided the Black community into the hip hop generation versus the current generation.
So largely Black youth, right? He's interested largely in youth of color and the disparities that youth of color face in the United States, right? Because that's the hip hop generation. He's talking about the people like us who have grown up with hip hop. So that's, like, simply put, like, that's what the hip hop generation is. It's just the people that grew up with hip hop. So that's all of us. What makes the hip hop generation so different then? What are the issues that this generation is facing?
I would say like before, they would like get their identity from like their cultural, like from their family members or like from going to church, and now they're like getting all this identity from like social media, yeah, and misinformation sometimes.
So there's an identity crisis for sure, right? Like, who are we as a community? Most of us don't really know, right? Because who you are is directing every day, your everyday life, right? So for example, the majority of you are going to identify as students first. Why is that? Because student life is going to take up majority of your life right now, right? You have to be very focused on being a student, right? That becomes your identity. So being American is an example of this, right? Especially with the rise of patriotism, you know, the push for folks to do like the Pledge of Allegiance and all of that in schools, right? That's about building an identity, right? With that identity comes this idea of success, right? And so there are symbols of success. Those symbols of success also change. They don't stay the same, right? So an example of that is high school, right? We'll go back to the idea of being a student. When you're a high school student, what is the thing that is going to make you successful?
Getting good grades.
Getting good grades. What else?
Just graduating.
Graduating, getting that high school diploma, right?
For some people, going to college.
For some people, getting an acceptance letter into college, right? Getting the acceptance letter first, because that's part of your high school identity. You don't become a college student until you enter college, right? So when you get that acceptance letter, that's success. Scoring high on the SATs or the ACTs or whatever the fuck exams they're doing, right? Most of those have been phased out at this point, but it used to be, right? That mattered as part of your identity, right? Well, when you have all of these things that are wrapping up your everyday, how do you focus on anything else? Now, people of color have an extra layer that gets added to this, right? We get this extra layer that gets added to this because, I mean, first of all, you're not even expected to graduate high school. So how are you expected to be successful then? What is success for youth of color?
Being alive.
Being alive.
And having a job.
Getting a job, right? Not a good job, any job. Having a job, being employed by somebody. You could be working at McDonald's. People want to congratulate you for having a job. Right? Especially if you're still in high school at that point. Mind you, we haven't left high school yet. Right? We haven't left high school yet. You could be a mediocre student in high school, but if you are a stellar athlete and that is the thing that gets you into college, you still have access to being successful. Right? So then it becomes your identity then becomes tied to the ways in which you survive. Right? It becomes part of that survival. How are you going to quote unquote get out? Right? How do you make it out of this? How do you get out of the system? How do you get out of the hood and all of that, right? So it becomes really intricately connected to survival. So let's think about education just a little bit more. So education, I mean, all the research shows this, right? Education is very tied to our economic development, right? And for us, like at this lower level, that just generally means that the more education you have, the better paying job that you are supposedly supposed to have also, right? The more education you have, the more access to better employment, right? Generally speaking, that's what the people say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, well, we're not even expected to graduate out of high school. So we're already behind the curve. How do you get your economic development then? Where does that come in?
Do you mean where does it come in if you don't graduate high school?
Mhm.
I think working multiple jobs and being a what's the term I'm looking for, in the working class.
Sure, there's one, right? More labor jobs more often than not, because they don't require you to have that same type of education, right? So more less educated job requirements. What else?
And then also enrolling into the governmental systems like welfare and
Yes,
et cetera.
absolutely, right? You get the quote unquote handouts, right? They set up this system to where you can't succeed and then give you some idea of success by saying, well, here's some extra money to help you out, right? But it's a setup. They're impossible systems to really get off if you get on them, right? Because they're not made for you to get off. They're just made to be like a little bit of a breadcrumb here and there. That's it. What else? Where's our economic development coming from?
I also feel like our kids.
Sure. In what way?
From my experience, and friends, people have kids and expect their kids to be greater than them and pull them up when they rise to success or fame. For example, basketball players.
Like the Ball brothers?
And so if a black boy, goes to college off a basketball scholarship and he, does well with basketball and he can bring his family up that way.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Right. So we ride on the coattails of the people who we're supposed to be raising, which does what? That increases child abuse, that increases the chances of staying in these cyclical traumatic experiences, right? That increases the trauma that then gets passed down to the next generation after them. Because what happens when they don't become successful? Because everyone can't be up there. So you've got 100,000 kids in one school district and everybody wants to be a famous basketball player. Everybody's not gonna make it. Then what? Now you're a failure on top of that. What else? Economic development. Where are we getting this money? Where does bread coming from?
Right now, it's like stimulus checks.
Before that,
Oh,
that would go in with the welfare example, actually, the stimulus checks, because they're not designed to actually help anything. By the time we get them, we're already far behind and paying damn near everything. It's gone. How about illegal activities?
You're running the streets and becoming a street thug, I guess.
You have to survive some kind of way.
Adapt to your environment.
You got to survive some kind of way.
I feel like this is where the saying comes in, you become a product of your environment.
Yes, absolutely, right? We are all products of our environments. And a lot of the time, our environments have been developed specifically in this manner to keep us in that environment, right? As long as we're in this environment, as long as we're stuck here, right? We're not a threat to anything outside of that environment. Does that make sense? We don't have time to disrupt the system. We trying to make sure we got next month's rent. Right? The kids got to eat. Right? Because they're not famous basketball players yet. But I'm going to keep feeding them because one day they're going to be. So the kids got to eat. Well, how do I feed the kids if I ain't got no money? I might steal that shit. Right? Now what? You're a criminal. You're a criminal because you was hungry?
Professor, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had this conversation with others before.
Sure.
I feel like it's the responsibility of the individual as well as society in this case.
In terms of?
I want to say being successful, but I know that's kind of harsh. And the reason I say that is because I do think our system is designed to be unfair and unequal. However, at the same time, I feel like if someone has that diligence and that determination and that discipline to like go to college and at least get a bachelor's to be better and get a better job for themselves, that is possible at the same time.
How much money do you think I make? I have 3 master's degrees. I've been teaching at Cal State Dominguez since August 2016, so fall 2016. I also went to school here. So I have bachelor's and 3 master's degrees. I teach a full-time load. How much do you think I make?
Can I say something, by the way?
Sure.
I mean, that sounds like you're feeding into the American dream. As long as you work hard enough, you can always succeed. That's what it kind of speaks to me when you're saying, like, if you have that diligence and when that grit, that hunger, it's just like sometimes that's not always, like, you need more than that when you're especially in these low income communities and you're a person of color. That's how I feel.
I feel like sometimes like higher education doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get paid more. I feel like you're stuck in the same hole as like if you graduated from high school.
So take a guess. Go ahead, Joe. Guess my salary.
180 to 120.
A year?
Yeah.
I want you as my boss.
Oh,
Go
Is
ahead.
it 80,000?
No.
$50.
No.
Am I off? Far off?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll definitely say more than 20.
Yeah, more than 20.
Okay. 40.
No.
30?
I make around $30,000 a year. So you want to tell me again about that? How education, all the drive and everything? I mean, I graduated top of my my first master's. Actually, they created an award based off of me because of how much I influenced that program. I have the highest GPA on record there. I graduated high school with over a 4.0. I graduated Dominguez with a 3.7. My last 2 masters was like a 3.7. All that drive and determination went where? So you have a perception about jobs too that isn't always the reality of those jobs, because that perception has been built specifically to keep us in these loops too. So the people who I've had plenty of students who are like, yeah, I want to be a teacher. That's great. I'm glad people want to be teachers, but understand the reality of it. The reality is you've been sold an idea about a job based off of the title and the perception that because we have more education, we're supposed to also be paid more money. It doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work out that way. I think contractually, I think my contract says like 32,000 something before taxes a year. Yeah. But if I wasn't here, the system wouldn't give a shit if I wasn't here. Like, first of all, they wouldn't care, right? They're going to find somebody else to fill the position. Easy. Because we need money, right? People need money in these streets. How much does your president make? I'm gonna have y'all go on Googling salaries now. And don't look at Glassdoor. Glassdoor is self-reports. So on Glassdoor, right, they tell me that I should be making somewhere between $80,000 and $120,000 a year. And I fucking wish. I wish. Not real. Most adjuncts have to actually work at multiple universities to make ends meet. But we're still faculty, we're still professors, we're still teachers, right? And so you get sold the idea of this is a good job. Good is relative, especially for people of color. So So we got education, right? Being very intricately tied to economics and our economic development, which is why so many folks in our communities go to the streets. They're gonna make more money. They're gonna make more money faster. Right? What did Meek Mill say? He said that he makes as much as his teachers make in a year, he makes that in a day, right? The teachers that told him that he wouldn't amount to shit in the Philly schools. Mostly they were probably just jealous because they already know like the amount of money that they were making, right? Versus the amount of money that someone who does make it can make. And so instead of encouraging that dream, right, the idea is to crush it. Because it's not considered a good enough job or a job at all, right? Being an entertainer or being striving to be a star athlete, right? They're not considered long-term good jobs. They're considered short-term temporary things. If you're actually going to make any real money at all, like for basketball players, especially like if you go overseas, you're not going to be making anywhere near as much money as NBA money, right? At that point, you're pretty much playing to play, right? There's other leagues that are pay to play. So some leagues you're not making anything because you're paying them in order to participate. But you get the image of being an athlete out of it, right? And you know how many apartments I applied for when they were like, "Oh, you're a teacher. That's a great job," and then they see my paycheck and they're just like, "What happened?" So let's take another step into this. He talks about politics, right? So what role does politics play in this?
What politics play on what?
The issues for Black youth and youth of color in the hip hop generation. So we've got education. Education is clearly an issue. We're not expected to even graduate. Beyond being expected to graduate, that education being intricately tied to economic development. We don't really have that because we're not expected to graduate in the first place. So where are you supposed to get your economic development from? Well, the best option and the fastest option for you to be stable is the streets, is crime. And we already know that crime and drug rates are ridiculously high in our communities, which also leads and lends to the identity of being a criminal, right? So talk about politics. Add politics to this list.
So like what the government is doing, like what it has been doing.
Such as?
Redlining, even like when Ronald Reagan was in office, the war on drugs, putting the drugs in our community.
Right, sure. There's one avenue, right? The people who already have political power, right? They're maintaining that power through using politics as their own platform to do it, right? And then creating other ideas like the war on drugs. Well, how do you create a war on something that you put in the damn community in the first place? Is that a war you're actually trying to win? No. It's all for the image. It's all for the image. That's literally like if you go and you were to shoot somebody up with heroin, right? But then you offer them Narcan to make yourself feel better. That's what the war on drugs is. Now for us, right, in the political realm, we don't have a whole lot of access to the political realm to begin with. Why is that?
We're not paying for cable. We don't know what's going on in the world right now. We're just in our own environment, trapped.
We don't even know what the hell's going on out there. How are you going to be politically involved and we don't even know what's going on? How are you going to make laws and be a say-so, right? How are you going to be a sayer and a doer and a mover in the political world to make things politically better for our own people when we have no idea what's even happening?
You can't even think to that capacity when you just know or like don't even know what your next meal is going to be.
Right. which for us, being at that bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, becomes way more important in our day-to-day. What else? What else bars us from political engagement?
Is it voter suppression?
Stay on these topics here.
Oh.
Just go back to these real quick. Voter suppression absolutely does, though. Yes. How about, don't they expect you to have some semblance of an education to hold these political offices?
Yes,
What kind of an education do they expect you to have?
probably at least a college, something to that extent.
At minimum, right? People will look at you a little funny if you're running for an office and don't have at least a bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, I thought we weren't even expected to graduate high school. What political realm we getting into like that? Remember that time that they wanted to put AOC on blast because she was dancing in college?
Yeah.
Remember that?
So
The fact alone that she's in college, right? That should have been the thing, but nobody cared about that. It was about her behavior as a college student, doing regular as college student things. So we're also expected to have a separate code of ethics and standards, right? A separate code of behaviors, a separate code of acceptability politics, right? If I were to roll up on somebody's political office, looking the way that I do in our classrooms, who in the communities that I'd want to represent are voting for me?
I think in that case, you have to play the game and assimilate your appearance to get in. Once you're in, then, you can wear your hair how you
No, you
want.
can't.
No, not even then.
No.
there'll be press after that. Like, why is she wearing her natural?
They were mad at Obama for wearing a tan suit. You think I can go with colorful braids?
Once you're there and you make it.
He was in office. He had been president. He'd been president. And he wore a tan suit one day. Yeah, it was a huge scandal. He wore a tan suit. Oh, and then there was the time that Michelle Obama wore shorts to the beach. We didn't even get on topic of hair on that one.
Can't wear shorts to the beach. Oh
yes, these were headlines. These are things that people were upset about. So we can't get in there and then decide to be ourselves. Then if we do that, what does that actually say about us? Right? With our community, that's going to create an issue. Right? That's going to create an issue. At what point are you going to not be fake? That's what it's going to come down to, right? That's what our people are going to say. You're fake. Right? Yeah, you're playing the game, but you're fake.
So what? I'm fake in office.
So you're elitist. That's going to be the response. Are you really for the people? If you were fake to get in there, you were willing to placate to these people? Who do you serve? Who are you for? Prove it. Because they wanted you to prove it on the campaign trail. That's the people that voted for you. So if you go in office and you switch up, at minimum, you're not getting another term. Because the people who voted for you the first time aren't going to vote for you a second time. It becomes a mass game that you are constantly playing. Let's go back to the crime rates. A lot of our people have records because we're trying to survive out here. How many people in office are getting voted for based off of their criminal records? That's usually the scandal part, right? That's usually the thing that people want to bring up as part of the dirt and the smear campaigns, right? Imagine our records getting put in a smear campaign. You gotta be perfect. You gotta be perfect. You can't be that white boy that raped that girl on campus and got a slap on the wrist from the judge, the 6-month sentence, because he didn't want to ruin the rest of his life. We're not that. We don't have that. We don't have access to that. We have to be damn near perfect to even think about getting in those spaces. Then when you get in those spaces, how do you guarantee that you won't be corrupted?
You can't. There's no guarantee.
You can't, because it's not set up that way. The system is set up to keep itself functioning. It's set up in a way to keep itself functioning. So we don't have a whole lot of political power, political authority. If we did, think about this. Would the Constitution still be here?
No.
Probably not. This document from the 1700s that was written when we weren't even legally considered close to people. We were the property they were talking about in the Declaration of Independence. Imagine it. Imagine Black people having a whole lot of political power.
I was scared. That's what happened. Black Panther Party. They were seen as a threat.
Yes.
They was actually able to do something.
Yes.
They were seen as the biggest threat in America at that time.
Correct.
Whole white America decided, oh, we got to shut it on down now because they're looking like a threat, even though.
What was the thing that made them a threat? What were they doing?
Gathering like not gathering. Was it?
There was a very specific action. There was a very specific action that the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was leading that caused them to be called the greatest threat to American security. The free breakfast program. Feeding Black kids so that they could pay attention in school.
What I know about that, I know that that program was shut down.
Yes.
Because the white man didn't like that the Black community was getting resourceful within themselves and supporting their own community. So they shut that down. So they would only have to rely on the white man's systems.
And then created their own that tried to mirror that system, which is the one that's currently in schools now.
But I think why this one was so special and why it was shut down is because the Black people were fighting resources and supporting each other and fighting resources with themselves and creating a community that way. And for so many reasons, they were like, oh no,
Yes.
not happening.
Yes.
Because number one, it was like the fact that Black people are finding community within themselves. Oh my gosh, no. Number two, Black people are finding resources within themselves. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Three, these Black folks are working together and raising money to support their children. Oh my gosh, we have to do something.
And they're not turning away anyone who comes to them. Because in this hip hop generation, we're following the leadership of those who started this movement, and therefore we don't look at race as being a skin tone. It's more about the socioeconomic issues and the socio-political issues and oppression in general, because we already had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who told us that oppression anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So we're not turning any other communities away either. Well, that is in direct violation of all the tenets of capitalism and consumerism and maintaining these systems of power and control and dominance, right? That does not help the case for the United States. So we have to get rid of it. And then, because it actually was working, we're going to throw everybody a little bit of a bone and make sure that this doesn't happen again by doing it ourselves. And that way we can also monitor it. We can put limits on it. We can say, well, you have to make less than this much money a year in order to qualify, right? You have to qualify for it now. It's not a free for all.
And then the limit is so low. And for those who make just above it, they're not in a better place financially, but because I make more, I'm unqualified for this resource.
Yep, exactly. So then what happens? Well, guess we're all just going to be hungry because most of our parents are going to end up making more than that minimum because we're working multiple jobs. Even if it's just $1 over, they don't care. There's no empathy in that system, right? Empathy does not fit in with capitalism. There's a great example of it for you. So let's talk about consumerism for a second. So consumerism then becomes a key issue that keeps the hip hop generation in particular stuck in this loop. Give me some examples.
Wait, repeat that question again.
How does consumerism keep us down or keep us in this cycle?
But they're rooting into the idea of capitalism being a good system?
Sure, yeah, we've definitely fed into that. Think about hip hop in particular. So hip hop is, in this case, going to function as both a platform and an advertisement. Those two ideas are going to be juxtaposed, right? But at this point, we're also not in charge of hip hop anymore. We're not in charge of what's being distributed in terms of mainstream hip hop when we get to the hip hop generation. Now, the hip hop generation is the folks who grew up specifically with rap music starting in hip hop, right? So we're not talking about the 70s and the 80s. We're really focusing in on the 90s and 2000s, right? We're not running shit anymore at that point because they figured out that it was lucrative, so they took it, right? They switched up the ways in which we could make music and distribute music, right? So, and really fast too, which is hard to keep up with if you're poor. So we went from what, the tapes, the 8-tracks, at some point we had vinyls, right? CDs, right? But how do you keep up with all of these different changes and all of these different needs when you're already poor? That's just making the music in general. We haven't even gotten to the looks yet. So now hip hop artists are being used as advertisements, as billboards for brands we can't afford.
I also want to add that not only are materialistic things like cars and houses and jewelry and things that aren't of value in the end being advertised, but it's also non-Black women and non-Black people being advertised in these videos, which also affects the Black community.
Right. Because when you see something, you want that thing, right? You're essentially being sold the idea of this is a thing that not only you want, that you need, right? You need this in your life. That chain that rapper's over there wearing, you need that because that's what success looks like, right? So we go broke to look like success.
Faking the funk.
Faking the funk, that's it, right? When we feed into the ideas and we accept the ideas that we're not good enough or that there's something wrong with Black people, like all those arguments that y'all been talking about, where Black people are just tearing each other apart in these comment sections on Instagram and stuff, that's all by design. You bought into the idea that we're not good enough because that's what we've been battered with. We've been told this for centuries at this point. We're not good enough. So you have to go want something else or you're not successful. All the basketball players that have white wives didn't come from nowhere. Just gonna put that out there.
You know, I remember growing up, especially like my Black peers, like everyone would be wearing the latest Jordans. The parents would be living in a low income apartment, but let me tell you, I cannot tell you how many Mercedes were in the parking lot. And I feel like our priorities are a little jumbled, just a little bit.
They are. Our priorities are absolutely jumbled on purpose because our priorities have to match the consumerism. Our priorities have to match capitalism. Our priorities have to match the system that we're always trying to survive in. We can't match and survive in this system if we're not willing to walk the walk. to create the looks, to be the have-nots by having more.
I feel like money was just allocated to the wrong things, for example. And then let me know if this is a good example, but instead of like buying expensive car outfits or just materialistic things, why not invest that into your child's education? If you know the school in our neighborhood is little, doesn't have the best, I guess, educational system or program, maybe going to a private school and paying or using that money that you would pay for those materialistic things to pay for their education.
Let's take a look at that. What happens when you get to that private school then, and you still don't have the latest and the best and the brightest and the newest?
You're an outcast, probably.
You think the kids give a shit that your parents paid for you to go to that school?
Not at all.
No. And a lot of those private schools also offer tuition breaks. So with that tuition break, it's another handout to get the folks into those schools. So I went to private schools. Those are the schools I got kicked out of. The first private school, my mom has 7 kids, first of all. So that's a hefty bill to be sending all these kids to this private school. And we all went there, right? The kids do not give a single fuck that you're at that school. They don't care that you're bettering your education. They're still kids at the end of the day. Kids are fucking mean no matter where you go. So you now get paid. Now you're paying a system to bully your child. Then what happens when you're the only Black kid in that system because nobody else is going over there? Doesn't make any sense. Economically, it doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, we might look at the Mercedes as being frivolous, but what happens when you don't have access to transportation and you're also going to this private school now? My bus stop for the first year of high school was 4 miles away from my house. 4 miles. And what do I get out of that? The clout of going to a private institution that when I get there kicks me out of class the minute I get in there because they don't want to answer any of my questions. Especially religion class. I got kicked out of religion class, like religiously, right? Pun intended. I would play Yahoo pool during religion class because what else was I gonna do? So now you're paying this institution for me to not be educated, because they don't want to deal with you either. So it's not even as easy as, oh, just go to these other schools. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. They don't know how to handle these issues either. So what happens when we go to these schools with race issues? And we want to have these conversations about race. What happens?
I feel like it's not addressed properly or it's swept under the rug.
It's not addressed. It's not even seen as an issue. It's a non-issue. Because these are also the same people who are not going to take accountability for their ties to that history. The Catholic Church, for example, enslavement was given the okay by the Pope. You think that the Catholic schools want to talk to you about enslavement? No, they do not. They don't want to accept any of that responsibility. So you're going to run into not only the same issues, but more issues with that route. Let's look at the woman who was arrested, or she got locked up a couple of years ago for trying to send her kid to a quote unquote better school. Remember that story?
I don't.
There was a Black mother who got locked up for sending her kid to a school in a different district than the one that she lived in. But the exact thing that you were bringing up, trying to just move them to somewhere that they would get better quality education. This was before the issue with the USC parent. What was her name? The Full House lady?
Lord.
Yeah, that one, right? And the only reason they even said anything about that was because they made a dumbass decision to put the kids under sports scholarships for a sport they never played before. And if you're a college athlete at that level, you know who's who. Then nobody knew who they were. And that's really what blew the whistle on it. This kind of stuff happens all the time, though. They do this all the time. They bribe people all the time to get their kids into these institutions because they have the money to do it. They don't have to worry about these race issues being discussed, right? It's not a thing. It's a non-issue. It's not what they're going to deal with. What are they going to deal with? They're going to deal with the haves and the have-nots. But the thing is that they're always going to be the haves at the end of the day, regardless of who's around them. So the institutions get the little bit of clout for saying, oh, we're so diverse, right? The diversity and inclusion lines that they love to throw at us. What changes, though? What changes get made for our communities when we graduate from those institutions? AOC over here getting clowned for going to college and dancing. So when we're thinking about these types of issues, right, the issues that are that don't exist in a vacuum, first and foremost, right, but that are also very intricately related, right, you have to add more scenarios when it comes to us, because it always results in that. It always results in more scenarios. There's a, let me see. Where's the thing I was gonna bring up for you? That's not it. Oh, I think I might have closed it by accident. Oh no, here it is. So there's a study by the Brookings Institute that was done. And this is specifically on the burden of crime and incarceration on the poor. And it talks about a lot of the things that we brought up today. Where's our chat? There it is. I'm gonna give you this. And I'm gonna give you the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which also discusses one of the things that we discussed today, which is the correlation between education and labor. Right. And so like, think about this like the cheat sheet, right? So this is pretty much how the critical thinking cheat sheet works in action. We have to keep adding scenarios. We have to keep adding questions. We have to keep adding what ifs. Because those what ifs are always the thing that make the difference for us when we end up in these conversations. So for Bakari Kitwana, right, for the hip hop generation, we can't look at a singular issue, right? We can't just say, well, hip hop music is violent and therefore that's why Black youth are violent. Well, no, right? Because the violence that has been occurring within our communities predates hip hop, right? Hip hop is only the platform that we've been using to discuss these problems. And so when we started using the platform to discuss these problems loudly and in public, right? That's when things started getting taken over by those who are in power and control, right? Because that's something that will disrupt the narrative. Well, now look at what hip hop looks like right now. Look at what hip hop looks like right now. How many people are really invested in mainstream hip hop that discusses political issues today with a drive to change something? I mean, we got Kendrick, sure, right? You get thrown a bone every now and again. Where's everybody at? Where's the NWAs and the Public Enemies?
Nowhere to be seen.
I think it's about once you make it. I mean, who cares? I mean, I made it. My family's good. I'm good. Shoot, go on, yo.
Oh, they care, all right. The people who are distributing the music and who manage the airways, and the reasons why you hear the same songs playing over and over and over again, they care. Who are the primary consumers of hip hop? Where's the money? Who's funding mainstream hip hop?
White people?
Who specifically? White middle class mothers. Because their kids want it. Their kids are the ones who are listening to it. Their kids are the ones who are going to the concerts. Right? How many artists have you heard in the last couple of years talk about the sea of white faces that they see out in the crowd? Why is that? We can't afford the damn tickets. People making whole accounts to go to see Beyonce. They got whole savings accounts to go see Beyonce, to go see Jay-Z.
What?
Yes, this is a thing.
They have a whole
We barely have
specific
savings
account.
accounts.
They
Yes,
have a Beyonce account. They have a Jay-Z account.
yes,
Dang. I didn't-
Absolutely not.
I hope you have a great day. We're gonna be leaving in just a minute. Too. I just want to bring this up because so all of these things are fueling what ends up being a facade of opportunity. And so we have like examples, we have short snippets of examples of people, particularly people of color, right, who become very successful, right? If we look at mainstream hip hop, we can name people that we look at as successful hip hop artists. Name a couple. Who's a successful hip hop artist right now?
Oh,
Future, Nicki.
Okay. What do they talk about?
Nothing.
They talk about something. They have to. There's lyrics.
Sex, money, women. That's about it.
Drugs,
Drugs here and there, yeah.
criminal activity,
being a gang, being a street.
consumerism. Right? Everybody wants them Balenciaga bags. Everybody talking about Prada.
Louis, Fendi.
So they're
Big-
pawns. They're pawns that get used in this facade of opportunity that demonstrate, well, look at these Black people. These Black people made it. They're successful. They're famous. They're all these things. They've got money, right? But what do they do to get there? Look at the content that they're constantly promoting in order to stay in that position. If any of them were to change, they're not staying in that position. They're just not, because it doesn't help the system. It doesn't feed the system well, right? Think about Oprah, right? Oprah is a great example of this facade of opportunity because she's very successful in what we have determined is success. Someone who is rich, someone who owns basically all her stuff, right? Who has control over her own image and her own person, right? How many Black people in this country, though, are really going to have the opportunity to be Oprah? So you tell us that it's possible because look at this one person over here, but then there's no avenues to actually get there because, oh yeah, we're not supposed to graduate high school. And then not having a high school education or having very little education means that we're already not gonna be looked at for a lot of job opportunities or political opportunities because we have to be some semblance of educated to even be welcome in that space, right? Because we don't have those things, we have to resort to crime and consumerism, right? So the consumerism is going to give us the facade of being able to get access to that, right? Not actually get there because now you're drowning in debt, right? You're drowning in debt for that look. Or you're not drowning in debt because you're a criminal. You're getting your money from the streets, not from employment, because they just told us that, you know, these jobs that we have, you know, they're great in name and name only. That's about it. So you see how all of this gets connected?
Yeah.
Give me one more relationship to hip hop from everything we talked about today.
Wait, what do you, so wait, say that again? What was
Relates
it?
something that we talked about today to hip hop.
Like something, oh,
I feel like hip hop originally was used to highlight issues of the Black community, but now it's just utilized to influence the Black community into whichever direction the sponsors of these music want it to be. I hope that made sense.
Yes, very much so. Very
Okay.
much so. Right? Because again, we're being used as advertisements, right? We're being used as both a platform and as advertisements.
Something else I wanted to add, when you were talking about the artists and what type of music they are releasing, I do want to say Beyonce lately, when I say lately, the past, I'll say decade, she's turned more cultural. She's a little bit more Black. And so just songs like Brown Skin Girl already, her last album was literally influenced by The Lion King. It was made for the Black community, including the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
Videos and all that. So I feel like she's an example of going back to her community.
So yes and no, only because if we look at the history of The Lion King is also something that was ripped off from African people in the first place. It was a whole book that never got credit. So by itself, it was already a negative platform to work off of. But beyond that, think back a couple of years ago when she was really trying to be political, right? She did like that whole Black Panther type, like the Black Panther Party type dress up when she did the Super Bowl. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was all this backlash from white people, and then she stopped doing it. Remember that?
Yeah.
And now what are we doing? Oh, we're just gonna sing about brown skin girls. You know, it's softer. It's softer.
Oh, I see. When she was way more political, she got backlash. Now she's okay. I see it.
Mm-hmm.
trying to make it comfortable for white people.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
in reality, they're the main target.
I'm really interested to see what happens with this push for Black businesses that she's been doing lately, because she is doing that, but Jay-Z isn't necessarily doing that either, because he's got like the whole that liquor thing that's coming out and some other business ventures and all of that, right? So there's a lot of placating and balancing that's going on to maintain that net worth. She can't be too loud. If she's too loud, she's going to get canceled by white people. This is truth.
That's the worst part ever. Is it's true.
But I mean, Beyonce is Beyonce. How can somebody cancel Beyonce? She's her own network.
They literally shut her down. Did you not hear what she was saying about the Black Panther thing? They made her stop doing that.
They was not letting her do that again.
But my thing is, I feel like I'll say yes for that, but I feel like nowadays she's way more bigger and more successful now, like today versus the Super Bowl when that happened.
She say anything about these Haitian migrants yet?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Don't worry, I'll wait. They'll wait too while they're getting whipped. We got a lot of people with a lot of platforms that are very quiet right now. There's a reason. Follow the money. All right, well, with that, I only missed one point here that I wanted to bring up, so I'll just say this quickly. So we have like major milestones that we consider to be successful achievements within our community. And those milestones are ages. So the ages are 18, 21, and 25. Right? If you made it to 18, you did something. If you made it to 21, you really did something. If you make it to 25 and past 25, you an OG. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Who else has this? This is like, so in George Washington time, right, in the 1700s, the average age limit, like the average expectation of life was like 40 something. So we're barely over like George Washington and their expectations. Think about that, right? Okay, so y'all know I hate ending things on a negative note. So let's get our affirmations in. What are we leaving our peers with for the week? Till Friday.
Stay motivated and you'll get through it.
Okay, stay motivated.
Keep
Hustle
your
and
head
work.
up when faced with adversity.
Okay. Let's get one more.
Mm.
If you could encourage your peers to do one thing to better themselves this week, what would it be?
Speak
Read.
out on what you believe in.
Somebody said read, someone said speak out on what you believe in,
Make mistakes because that's how you're gonna learn.
make mistakes because that's how you're gonna learn. I love that.
I
All
would
right.
say read and get informed. This
Say that
so
one more time.
read and get informed. It's still so important today.
Yes, absolutely. I was just talking about that on my Instagram earlier today, right? Read everything and get as informed as you can, because you will never get all the information you need from a singular source. You just won't. If you could, you wouldn't have to write research papers that have multiple sources, right? It's all for a reason. It's all for a reason. All right. Well, with that, I hope that y'all have a wonderful 2 days until I see y'all on Friday. Mind your self-care, and please watch what's going on in with these Haitian migrants. Y'all, it's really fucking important.
Mhm.
All right, I'm getting out of here. I gotta get
All
out.
right.
All right, have a good one.
You too.